ways to increase your enjoyment and improve results from co-marketing programs. So we're actually very honored today to have two phenomenal speakers with us to give us some insight into how to do this. We have Nico Bernie Miller. She's the Chief Executive Officer for Change3. And we have William Freewa. He is the Principal Consultant for Lumo Consulting. And both companies are full service marketing and lead generation agencies, working with vendors, IBM, Microsoft, Lenovo, Click, AWS, Red Hat, and Cisco, I'm sorry, just to name a few. And they work with assisting partner organizations in crafting successful co-marketing programs to not only be successful, but also comply with vendor guidelines. So thank you both for joining us today. And with that, we have some statistics that we're going to dive into. But first, I wanted to let you know, I'm just going to put this up real quick. I know you selected a reward, and as soon as you complete a 1-minute voice verification on the phone after the event, we will get that sent out to you as soon as possible. So let's dive in. So these, you notice that you participated in a couple of questions preceding this, and we wanted to kind of show you kind of the results as to, looks like Microsoft and IBM are some of the two top programs that most of you are currently registered with. So it was kind of interesting and wanted everybody to, and also the types of solutions are sales support and cloud solutions. So just wanted you to get a quick view into that. Now we're going to dive into our first stat. These are really, really interesting to me. So it shows us here that almost 60% of companies use some sort of partnership to acquire new customers. It also shows us that 71 of consumers enjoy partnership marketing campaigns. One thing we learned is that not everybody kind of utilizes them. So I'm gonna, ask Nico, how can vendor-sponsored programs, co-marketing programs, how can they best fit into, a partner's strategic marketing efforts?
What a great way to kick off this conversation with such a positive statistic. So what these data show us is that partners are just core, right? Critical to the success of selling complex solutions, especially technology, and that the market loves partners. So I wanted to acknowledge that. I've been working in, around, and researching the channel for the last 3 decades, even though I know I only look 25. But I'm a little bit older. And so the way I'll answer this question is actually with a couple of questions, because the right answer to this question really depends on each partner. So the first question that I'll ask each partner to ask themselves is, how do you manage data? How do you manage your sales and marketing data? So the answer to that question will play a really important role in how well you'll be able to integrate these types of programs, which can be very solution or offer specific or vendor specific, of course, rather than strategic to you as a partner. So that's the first question. How do you manage sales and marketing data? And then the second question to ask and answer for yourself is, how do you manage relationships with new prospects? So there's no right or wrong answers to either one of those questions, and there's no perfect combination. The combination that works the best for your organization and that fits best into your budget is the right answer for your business. But here are some things that I've learned in those 3 decades of working in and around the channel, and obviously for half of that time has been the head of an agency or 3. So here's some things around how you manage sales and marketing data. So the 3 things that I would encourage anybody to do to have the most success in your selling and marketing operations would be to consolidate and standardize all of your sales and marketing data. So that sounds really obvious, right? But it's actually not. Even in tiny companies, especially in big companies, salespeople have their own sales data, right? They got their little cards, they met some people, they have their favorite buddies, and that gets partitioned off or actually disaggregated from your core, data warehouse or data collection or what have you, whatever you like to call it. And the same is true for marketers and other parts of your business. So really the effort to consolidate all that and to standardize it is actually not always a small task, but it's so important because it takes you to the next part, which is where you can maintain and monitor that data. Permissions, temporary exclusions, things like that. One of your key customers might be away for a while and then there's someone else that's in the role. There are loads of things around monitoring and managing that data that's so important to your successful sales and marketing operations. And so being able to do that generally is helped when it's consolidated and standardized. And then that takes us to the last thing, which is really the money question, right? How do you score your data? So do you have a lead score, or is there some sort of a score to say, hey, this person's engaged, they're a potential client, this is where they are in the sales process, this is where they are in the funnel. And again, those types of things can be a challenge. They often, as you guys know, require some technology usually and some expertise. Working with an external expert often can help with that. But as it relates to how you manage your sales and marketing data, those are 3 tips: consolidate and standardize, maintain and monitor, and then obviously score it so you can take action on it. The second question around how do you manage relationships with prospects would be the next thing that, you might go, and it's, again, you'd be like, I manage these relationships great. But I would challenge you to go deeper and see if there's some opportunities to further operationalize how you manage it as an organization, for example. So again, your marketing team might be hosting events, and the people who register for those events, some of them attend, some of them don't. Some of those people might be talking to your salespeople, some of them may not. So are they woven into a fabric of possible interactions that will allow your salespeople to build relationships, with those people? Are you doing other things that might allow you to build relationships with those people? Are you looking at your data so you can see how well you're engaging these contacts to build those relationships? There's a ton of questions, but the whole category of how do you build relationships with new prospects is really a critical answer. So with that being said, the way you answer those 2 questions will allow you to integrate vendor co-marketing activities into your strategic marketing efforts. So whether they give you leads, whether they give you data, whether they give you marketing resources or tools, whether they give you marketing data or opportunity to speak at an event, all those things will funnel into your consolidated, standardized data. You'll be able to score those data records. You'll be able to enable your salespeople to have better conversations with them. So it doesn't matter how tactical the vendor's activity might be, you'll be able to integrate it well into your strategic marketing efforts. So, Will, what do you think? Do you totally disagree with me, or do you have some additional insight to share?
I do kind of very much agree with you.
Thank you.
I was thinking about some of the vendors I had worked with and some of the partners who took advantage of the co-marketing funds that the vendors provided. And one tool that always came to mind, which was the perfect fit between a vendor's plans and what a reseller or a channel partner actually does, is, account-based marketing. So think of it this way: vendor provides guidance, and then that usually goes to a distributor, unless you have a direct relationship with the vendor, who then works with a particular reseller. The last thing that the reseller, in contacting a prospect, wants the prospect to feel like, when these people call you at 5 o'clock to upgrade your cell phone and they're speaking from a script, that's like the worst thing ever. But if you can do some account-based marketing all along the various steps that I discussed, get your information from the vendor, make sure the distributor's working with you. I would say, and even maybe it's, tooting our own horn, but get yourself a really experienced marketing agency and make sure that you have the complete information on who you're planning to target based on who they are, what do they want, what are they looking for, what are they interested in. The last thing you want to do is find out, you call them about A and you find out they have no interest in A whatsoever and they're actually about B and you've just now lost it. And I think that's a great way, account-based marketing, between incorporating that into a partner strategic marketing effort, using the tools and information that the vendor provided, kind of gives you the complete package.
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. Awesome.
Thank you both. Thank you both. That gave us a little insight into some best practices and ways that they can definitely make it more enjoyable. And that actually falls right in line with the next stat that we have here, which is marketers find that, proving ROI, that's the main thing, right? That's the main challenge.
Mhm.
However, at 30% or more of vendors provide, co-marketing reimbursements based on ROI, which is, simply something that's the number one challenge to get to. So, how is it? I can ask this a lot. How can partners, how can we more easily use co-marketing dollars based on all of the various terms and all these conditions that apply?
I'll take that one first too. So I've had the joy to work with like literally hundreds of partners over, my tenure. And Will, you haven't, you're a little bit younger than me. So,
Thank you for the kind words.
Yeah, so you probably work with just a couple fewer or maybe a couple more, right? So we've been around, us two, we've been through a lot of iterations. And I'll say this, I like to keep it light. So the first thing is like, you got to be on top of the T's and the C's, because what we're learning is vendors are changing them actually even mid-cycle. So, the program might have been introduced, like, for example, a lot of the vendors that I saw that you guys, might be working with, like Microsoft or IBM or somebody like that. They've already, or they're starting to announce their funding for Q1. A lot of the co-marketing resources and programs and fundings and things like that is quarterly. So they're either are starting to announce it or they're going to announce it really soon. And there's going to be some terms attached. But what we're discovering is that throughout the course of the quarter, those terms could be updated. So you definitely want to make sure it's part of your process to just check out the terms, even though, you're like, oh, it didn't change. It could before you submit any claim, any reimbursement, any marketing activity plan, anything. Just give a quick perusal on those terms. But I haven't answered the question, which is how can you more easily, because this is all about enjoyment, right? You guys are probably pros at this stuff, just like us, and you've been at this for a while and you know the ins and the outs. But what we're trying to tell you is, how can you make this more enjoyable, right? Because we know that what we're doing is important. So how can we have more fun at it, right? Well, one of the ways you can have more fun at it is to make it easier to manage. So the first thing is, look at those terms and then start to think about the simplest possible way to meet the terms. So for example, if we take, I'm not going to mention any vendor names, but if we take an example of a big old company, right? A big old tech vendor, they have revamped, a lot of them have revamped their co-marketing programs in the last few years. Partners, what they get from their participation as a partner has changed. And so there might be more or less terms involved. Some things are more terms, other things are less. Maybe you don't have to show leads, right? Before you might have had to say, okay, I've gotten 10 leads from this activity. But now you might have to say, I've gotten 2 sales instead, right? This ROI, return on investment. So make sure you really know what those terms are up front, and that whatever your strategy is, that you're going to really be in a great position to fulfill those terms, even at the most minimum level. Working with an agency partner, I think Will mentioned it last time, but I'll mention it too. It's like, and you guys have probably already worked with agencies, right? Find that partner that like works really great with you. There are tons of agencies. They're not necessarily tons of good ones, but there are lots of agencies. But work with an agency partner that's got some experience in this. I'll let you talk about the whole process of actually, outsourcing the whole terms and conditions and the claims and stuff. But I'd say that the easiest way is to just be aware of the terms. And all my experience, the problems that partners have faced with non-compliance with terms is because they actually weren't aware of them. And they got some funding, they started an activity that they thought fit in the terms. They spent the money on the activity's over, and then they find out that it was not compliant. And it is usually something small. They gave away a gift. The value of the gift was too high. Maybe the type of activity was supposed to be digital, but they had a live event, So it's always really small, T's and C's, dotted I's and crossed T's, right? It's usually very small things that can take you by surprise. So having a real thirst to make sure you fully understand the terms at the time in which you submit your claim, and that you've carefully made a plan to be compliant with them is absolutely important. And when you do that, then it makes it really easy. If you try to retrofit, then that's when it becomes difficult. So what do you think about that, Will? Tell me more about your your experiences with it.
Yeah, I do kind of, no surprise here, tend to agree with you. And actually, in looking at the numbers that Sandy just showed, which is 30% of vendors provide co-marketing based on or contingent on ROI, that's actually a trend in the right direction. If you go back 5 to 10 years, it was probably 50, 60, 70, where the only requirement and the only contingency was you needed to prove ROI, which is not very realistic, because all of the programs that we participate in, especially as mentioned, there's lots of folks from IBM, Microsoft, TD Ingram, so on and so forth. These are not simple, go to Best Buy, pick it up off the shelf, buy it, install it, and by tomorrow you have I made the sale, here's my ROI. I think if you do this based on relationships and how much you progress, going back again into account-based marketing, that's the proper way of doing this. In other words, if you show the vendor that you are making progress on the co-marketing activity that you have done or you have requested, then that goes towards getting it in the right direction. The second thing is, yes, you mentioned terms and conditions. Right now, we're going to calendar 2024 in January. So most probably a lot of the terms and conditions for the marketing request forms have already changed by the end of December. So do you know about that? Have you looked at them? Have you looked at the details? I mean, and the fine print sometimes requires a magnifying glass to look at it, but it's well worth it. Yes, use somebody like us who has done so many of those that we can do this blindfolded. Or even if you don't want to use marketing agency, have somebody else from your company come in, somebody who's not too familiar with this, and take a second look and say, oh, well, you know what? We're inviting a government customer. Terms and conditions specify various rules for governments, or we're providing a gift, or some of the same things that you had mentioned. Combine the relationship with the progressing towards with the sales cycle, and somebody having a second look on terms and conditions is the most important thing. You have to remember, if you submit a claim that where you have not followed the terms and conditions, you're now subject to an audit by the vendor. It's nothing to do with us. And an audit by the vendor literally requires that they will assign a person who will come in and talk to you and go through it with a fine tooth comb to try to figure out where you can go, where you went wrong. So it's not something you particularly want to do. So it's much better having somebody come in, take a second look, point it out, somebody with some experience in doing this, so that you do what you're best at. Sell the solution, get the sale, service the customer, have a happy customer at the end of the day, and not spending 20 hours trying to figure out where's that obscure piece of paper you forgot to include.
Yeah. So wise. Yeah.
Well, thank you. It seems like having an agency partner to look into a lot of that stuff would save headaches.
At least a little bit of
us.
advice, time to time. It helps. It definitely helps.
Definitely. And thank you so much. So that is going to take us into our final statistic, which right now is a high percentage, over 91% of marketers say that lead generation is the most important goal. And with that, over 50% and that they spend at least half their budget on lead generation. So I've been hearing this a lot, so I wanted to ask this, in what areas, Nico, outside of lead generation, are other partners investing their dollars, and why are they shifting? And do you feel this is going to continue?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll bring it back to the topic, which is, how do you increase your enjoyment with co-marketing? And then I'll answer this specific question. So as we talked about, the last one was about terms and conditions, and that they can be a little bit sticky, and you can run into issues if you don't have a really good strategy up front. And it doesn't have to be a complicated strategy, just a good strategy up front to make sure you're in compliance. If you're good and compliant, it's going to be smooth and nice and easy. So, but what we find is that a lot of partners don't use the co-marketing dollars that are available to them. They might do the training, and they use the technical sales support, and they might use a couple of the marketing resources, but they might not actually use the funds because they've determined, oh, this is too hard to deal with. And what we've seen in recent years, especially with some of the vendors that this group's working with, there's some strings attached. Oh, you've got to do a digital campaign, which includes social or paid search or this or that, or you've got to revamp a web page, or you've got to federate content, or something really specific that sometimes isn't always part of the partner's program or plan, marketing activities, and it becomes a little bit harder to do than what they like. To answer this question, though, I'd say my prediction, and I'm going to have a little contest with Will. So my prediction is that in the next 5 years, it'll still be 90+% of marketers will say lead generation is their most important goal, but they might not use the term lead generation because it's almost becoming a kind of a pejorative term. Nobody wants to be a lead, right? Nobody wants to be sold. So it'll really be focused on like relationship marketing. So it's like, 100% of my efforts are to build relationships with my future customers, right? My potential customers. And I would say that more than 50% of them are going to spend half of their budget or more on that activity. But that activity, to what it looks like, might continue to morph. So in the last few years, we saw partners spending way more money on digital. So some of the folks in this conversation might be spending money on paid search, maybe LinkedIn ads, maybe other social media ads, display. Now you can do videos and various platforms, over the top videos, live events, webinars. There's tons of tactics that tech companies of varying sizes can use to engage with their audience and start relationships, right? Some work better than others. I would say that I'd expect to see less spend on pure digital marketing, like paid media, display, paid search, social media marketing, that kind of stuff, unless it is attached to what Will talked about earlier, account-based marketing. It is going to be completely useless to you as a tech provider if you cannot make that digital engagement um, um, known, right? Right now, when you do digital marketing, it's all anonymized, right? You do not know who you're marketing to. You just trust that the interest-based targeting or the criteria-based targeting or behavioral targeting that you've set up in that network, even LinkedIn, which is awesome, right? The best out of all of them for business to business or business technology. But you still don't know who you've talked to, right? You don't know which companies, you don't really know a lot about them. And they're not going to tell you that either unless you get a conversion. But there's some actually in the last couple, 3 years, there's been some new tech that's rolling out in the marketing technology world, particularly around data. That's why, I started off my conversation around, hey, there's two important things, how do you manage data? How do you manage relationship? Well, on the data side, there's been some real movement around implicit and explicit, data knowledge, data graphs, data maps. And we actually have access to them. We use them. So, and you guys might be using some of these tools where you actually can see for the people who come to your website, for example, what companies they work for, like how valuable is. So we're going to start to see companies investing in those types of solutions, those type of services and technologies, because just reaching out to an unknown audience, waiting for, your scattershot approach to result in conversions is unfortunately wasteful. And the dollars that we have, even when we think we have a big budget, is like just a pittance of what it really takes to penetrate an audience. So you got to be really efficient. So that's where that account-based marketing comes into play. And the last thing I'd say is I would say 5 years from now, it'll be 75% of marketers will spend at least half of their budget on lead generation. And it'll be some traditional, like appointment setting, where you have appointments, and the other things will be non-traditional, but it'll all be dealing with a known audience. So, what do you think? What do you think of my prediction?
I'm not betting against you because I actually think you're going the right direction. So I do
That's why
think
I love
that a
you.
lot more, it's more than 53% going to spend their budget on lead gen.
I
If you just
agree.
go to the news today and you look at market factors that affect the working environment that we're all in, there's
Mhm.
problems in the Middle East, there's elections here, there's issues, there's, this scandal with this bank. Put all of that together, and the market that we're all operating in is always in a bit of a turmoil, which affects how people buy or don't buy, you know.
Mhm. Yeah.
So you have to think of how can we reach them? How can we differentiate ourselves between everybody else who is still trying to reach them? So ABM marketing or account-based marketing is great. And
Yeah.
if we have the data that when we contact a lead or a prospect, then that shows we genuinely care about them, that we are a trusted source using data, which you had mentioned, as our basis to contact them. Now, you need to have your social media, but social media, as you rightly pointed out, on its own doesn't mean anything. If
Yeah.
you're going to have, LinkedIn ads, okay, so what's the next step after LinkedIn ads? Do you have a process and a plan in place in how to reach these people who showed an interest in you? And what does showing an interest in you mean? Are they generally interested in getting something? Or are they just, you know, I clicked on the ad by mistake? Go to Facebook, the same thing. Webinars are great because they are replayable. Uh, and you're trying to get to the point based on the solutions we sell where you end up having a conversation, whether it's by Zoom or face to face, with the lead that presents a solution to the challenges that they're having, and you can help them overcome. So lead generation, going all the way from data to find out who visited your website to who clicked on your ad banner, along with a plan that would say, these are the next steps we're going to take as we get it. Yeah, I think it would be more than 50%, maybe
Yeah.
going up to 60 or something else. So you're definitely looking at the right market trends when you put these numbers up.
I'll bet you 32 cents that let's have a bet and we'll get together in 5 years and see if we were right.
Canadian or
I'm gonna want to
US?
know the I'm gonna want to know the results on that bet. So as you can see on the screen, you've heard from us, our Nico and Will, just given us so much information. We want to hear from you now. So if you could please participate in this short poll, you have a chance of winning $100, and just giving us your insight. And I'm going to go ahead and launch that now. And I also wanted to point out that Change3, we have a prospects program. And what that entails is that we like to get to know partners. And right now I'm recruiting. We do these events. These are great. You can get a couple of leads out of doing these. And right now, if there's, partners out there, I'm recruiting for AI webinars or chatbots, anything really, systems modernization, IBM systems. If that's in your wheelhouse, get in touch with me. I'd love to talk to you.
Awesome. Yeah, our events like this are awesome, and BeTechly is I understand hosting a ton of events over the 2024 period. And Sandy, you know, as you were mentioning, you know, Change3 has a prospect program. So we actually would fund, you know, you as being an expert, like Will and I, you know, we're the expert in this BeTechly conversation around co-marketing, but BeTechly hosts a ton of events around technology. Obviously, that's the core for BeTechly. And so we'd be happy. Change3, that's one of my things as I build relationships is, you know, to actually fund the cost of hosting a webinar for a business technology company that fits into the program for 2024. And there's lots of topics. So the first step is, of course, to join our prospects program here at Change3 and tell us more about you. And then if you fit into the program, you know, for what we're planning for you know, our initiatives this year, then we'd love to showcase you as an expert to talk to, you know, commercial market, you know, potential customers for you. You know, these events, like this one, it's like, you know, I think almost 60 partners, registered and very high attendance, usually north of 60%. So the same is true when it comes to, you know, commercial market programs. So we're willing to fund that for some of our partners. So we hope that you'll tell us more about you, and we'd love to partner with you on an event like this. They're very successful.
Yes,
So
please.
Sandy, will we be able to see the results for the poll? Because I think the first question is, what are the greatest challenges with your use of co-marketing funds? Oh, that's a good one. Will and I talked about a
Yeah.
bunch of those today.
It looks like almost everybody. I'm going to give just a couple more minutes, but I did see, Nico, that we have some questions. I know we're getting kind of close to end time.
Yeah, let's dive
but,
in.
this is from Anand. So, and this is something I know this is in your wheelhouse. So when you send marketing material, how do you ensure the vendor will read it, as they may be getting a lot of marketing material throughout the day?
Good question. That's such a great question. So I'm going to differentiate, and Will, I'd love your thoughts too. So you've got marketing collateral, right? Material. You can send it digitally, and or you can send it physically, like through post, right? So I always say you give them a little bit of an enticement in there. I recommend you do both. Even if you send it a physical asset to someone, you know, your brochure, or, you know, your letter or your postcard or whatever, sneak a little bit of something in there that's going to delight them, you know, a cookie, for example. You know, you can get your logo printed on a cookie, a royalized cookie. You can have it made locally in your area. There's loads of things, really delightful. You can send a little cookie. You could send a little gift. There's tons of great gifts. Today, one of our clients at Change3 is a very large telecom operator here in the United States. And, you know, we work with them quite a lot. And one of the things that they're going to be including in a letter to new customers is like a little magnet, you know, with their account number and stuff that you can put, you know, on your fridge. So when you call and you're like, I need you to reduce my fees, you'll know what your account number is, right? It's sometimes really small little things like that that can really delight a customer. So I would suggest that you include an enticement of some sort that fits your budget. So, Will, what do you think, to answer Anand's question?
I was trying to think of some of the customers I've worked with. What have they done? And yes, I would agree that collateral is very important. So if you're sending it via email, be mindful of the size, because a lot of prospect company systems will virus check attachments coming in. So a link is better than an actual attachment per se. Make sure it is valid, make sure it's relevant, make sure it is up to date. So that's the first thing. In other words, make sure you're sending them the right thing. The second thing is from a differentiation, and make sure that they look at your stuff versus just pressing delete. For example, is you know, make it personable to them if you're doing digitally via email or something like that. And one of my previous customers used a greeting card, and that was signed off by the reps in sending it towards their particular clients. And another one, it was the area, I think, where the US and Canada were collaborating on something. Can't remember which particular thing it was, but they sent one of these little pins that you put on your pocket, and it had a Canadian flag and a US flag on it. So
Nice.
it's not the monetary value because I mean these are not thousands of dollars worth on a pin.
Mm-mm.
But what it is, it's telling them I care about you. I want you to look at my stuff. My stuff is relevant, and I think my stuff will help you. So
Yeah.
why not?
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you for that question. Thank you for that question.
Yeah. As you can see on the screen, there's multiple ways to reach the team. We have a chat. We do have a phone number. We also have an email. I am sharing the poll results for those that want to view
I
them.
love them. So interesting. Yeah.
Mhm. And I did want to say thank you so much, and also let you know that the connections team from BeTechly will be calling you shortly to get your feedback on today's event and topic, and also to confirm your details. Which would be our 1 minute voice verification. If you did have questions that we did not get answered, we'll reach out to you, and one of us will reach out to you and answer those questions for you. Nico, Will, thank you so much for joining today and giving us this awesome amount of information. I've learned a lot. I hope everyone on here has. Again, thank you all for coming, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
I look forward to talking to you guys. Bye.
Thank you very much. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.